3 new Sung Jinwoo weapons have been added, with 2 of them being absolutely broken, so today I'm going to be updating my best weapons tier list. So this is my last tier list I did in my previous video, where we have all of the best weapons in the SS tier, going all the way down to the D tier, where we have all of the worst weapons. And of course, like I did just say as well, we now have 3 brand new weapons, with them being Forest's Wish, Stormbringer, and then finally Winter Fang. But before I do rank any of the new weapons, I do want to make a lot of different changes to my current tier list, because I felt from my last video I was definitely way too kind to a lot of the different weapons, especially in the higher tiers. So the first set of changes in this tier list is going to be starting from the B tier, because I want to bump down the Karsuka's Venom Fang, the Naga Guardian's Dragon Trident, and then finally the Lustrous Dragon Sword, as well as also the Demon Knight Spear. These weapons are all going to go down to the C tier, because none of them have ever really been used for anything in such a long time, and I am definitely wanting to try and be a lot harsher with this weapon tier list, so I think C tier is pretty fair for them all. And as well, the Marlin Surfboard and the Spooky Pumpkin are both going to go down to the C tier, because just like all of these weapons, these two are pretty bad. But then moving down to the B tier, we're going to have 6 different weapons move all the way down to this tier, with the first 3 being the Orb of Avarice, the Radiru Family Longbow, and then the Frostbite Falchion, just because I feel like these weapons are pretty just too niche right now. And then the last 3 weapons moving down are going to be Vulcan's Rage, Skadi, and then finally we have the Juicy Grilled Skewer, because let's face it, nobody uses these weapons, or at least a lot anyways. So this then means that the A tier is completely empty, and I'm going to be moving 2 weapons down to this tier, with the first one being the Shadow Scythe and the second one being the West Wind, because when it comes to DPS weapons for the Dark Elements, the Shadow Scythe just isn't really usable as a main DPS weapon, and is sort of mainly just used to buff your crit rate and also your attack stat. And with both of these weapons having a lot of competition within their own respective elements, I feel like, me personally, I can't rank them any higher than the A tier currently. S tier is up next, and the Zeke's Fragments, the Demon King's Longsword, and finally the Golden Tail Fox are all going to be moving down to the S tier, because when I make changes to the S plus tier, if I ranked all of these weapons alongside what weapon is going to move down there next, it really would just look stupid, so I feel like the S tier is going to be where these weapons properly fit. So then the very final weapon I'm going to move down a tier is actually going to be the Demonic Plumflower Sword, going down to the S plus tier. And this might seem pretty controversial, but for me and from my own personal experiences, I have this weapon currently at A10, and I haven't used it in such a long amount of time, which is why I feel like it is going to go down to the S plus tier, because I don't really feel like it has any sort of really meaningful content for it to be useful in, and I feel like it does need to be in sort of that position for it to warrant it being in the SS tier, at least in my opinion. So after moving a lot of different weapons down to a lot of different tiers, I only actually have one weapon that I do want to move up a tier, or a couple, and that is going to be the Knight's Killer. And the reason for this weapon being so good is, if you've seen the current guild boss that's out right now, and you look at other people's current scores, and especially what weapons they're using, you'll actually see a lot of people are opting to go for the Night Killer weapon, which is because it does have a buff called Night Killer, which does increase the user's defense penetration by 2.4%, stacking up to 10 different times. But the final really important thing about this weapon is going to be the component destruction debuff it does apply, which basically says the target's damage taken increases by 2%, stacking up to 5 times, and is completely infinite, so you can have a permanent damage increase of up to 10%, which overall does make this weapon very, very good. Meaning I'm going to put it all the way up into the S tier alongside all of these weapons, because in my opinion this is the only SR weapon right now that does have a use for a core game mode. Which then does bring me on to ranking all of the 3 brand new weapons that we do currently have, starting off with Forest's Wish. And the role this weapon is going to be playing when you are running your Jinwoo's Wind element setup is it's basically going to be a supportive weapon, because when the user's core attack does hit, you can grant the Wish effect onto yourself, and at A0 this will increase your damage dealt by 20% for 20 seconds, so it's not too bad. But it can then actually be enhanced through its A1 and then also its A3, with its A3 version now increasing your damage dealt by 40%, and when Wintry Song hits, which is your skill that you have, you can activate the Root Dispersion effect, which deals additional damage equal to 100% of the user's attack to targets across a wide range, so this will be good against a lot of AoE mobs and doing lots of AoE damage, so pretty decent, I guess. So yeah, as a support weapon, the Forest's Wish is not too bad. It's relatively okay, definitely not anything to stress over and think about using for a lot of endgame content, which in my opinion is going to make it go all the way up into the A tier. Stormbringer is up next, and quick spoiler alert, I think this weapon is possibly the very best weapon in the entire game. And this is going to be because this weapon has so many really powerful buffs and also debuffs that make it just so incredibly overpowered, because for example, when your Sung Jinwoo's strength stat is at 300 or more, you You can apply the Awakened Storm buff to yourself, which is completely permanent throughout the whole entire fight. And this basically says when Hailstorm does hit, the whirlwind that was created triggers an effect that does pull in enemies, so it has a really good AoE damage. But the most important thing for me personally with this buff is going to be the 30% attack increase and also the 5% increase in your precision. And then another buff that it does have, which is very, very powerful, is going to be Gathering Storm, which you get through its A1 advancement. And this activates when your skill does hit, and what this says is basically when the user's wind basic skill hits, you can inflict the Storm Strike effect on the target. And what Storm Strike does is it will deal damage equal to 1600% of your attack, which can go all the way up to 3200% of your attack at A5. With it then saying when the effect is activated, you can then trigger the Tempest Mark debuff on your target, which is a debuff that lasts for up to 20 seconds and can stack 2 times, with each stack increasing your enemy's damage taken by 10% and their wind damage taken by 15%. And with the wind element currently being one of, if not maybe the best elements right now with your Sung Jinwoo, especially with the likes of the Yoggerman's Workshop of Brilliant Light being weak to wind, I really do think this is the best weapon in the entire game, so I'm going to move it all the way up into the SS tier. Moving on then, we have the very final weapon to rank in this tier list, which is going to be the Winter Fang. And this is a monstrous DPS weapon that can also apply a lot of buffs to yourself and also a very powerful debuff to your enemies, making this weapon do a lot of damage. Its advancements as well can allow you to charge your power gauge by 10% every second when you have used a water elemental skill, and this is very vital because its skill like Wolf's Echo does actually use your power gauge in order for you to use the skill as opposed to mana, so with you being able to charge your power gauge by 10% every second with a water skill is going to be very, very good. And also through its A1 alone, when your skill does actually hit, you can activate the Silver Mark effect on the target every half a second, which does increase the damage of the Wife Waltz Knight skill by 55%, which is the final version of this weapon skill because it does have 3 different skills that it can use. And this can be further enhanced through its A5, allowing the debuff to stack 2 times, meaning you can then actually increase your skill's damage by 110%, which is a massive amount of extra damage. Some other really, really great buffs that it does have is going to be the Dusk buff, which normally would at A3 would just increase the crit rate of your skill by 15% and the crit damage of your skill by 40%. But just like its debuff, through the A5 of this weapon, you can then further enhance the Dusk buff to then increase your skill's crit rate by 25%, as well as also its crit damage now by 80%. And then finally, you can then increase the water damage of your skill by 80% for 3 seconds, meaning this weapon is going to be one of the very best DPS weapons in the entire game. And with the Winter Fang definitely being a fantastic choice for the Yoggerman's Workshop of Brilliant Light and also just other water-based content, I think it does definitely mean it is going to go all the way up into the SS tier. So there you have it. This is my current updated tier list for all of the weapons in Solo Leveling Arise for Sung Jinwoo. And overall, if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!